From becoming the first teenager in history to become the #1 in ATP to winning a Grand Slam before he even turned 20, Carlos Alcaraz has some special talent. He's been labeled the next GOAT by many analysts and coaches alike. For instance, coaching legend Rick Macy sees big things in Alcaraz's future. Macy is a true legend when it comes to coaching. He's the man behind the success of many stars. For instance, the Williams sisters, Andy Roddick, Maria Sharapova, and even 2020 Australian Open winner Sofia Kenin. So when Macy speaks, people listen. And if someone still doubts his credentials, well then, allow me to explain. Macy didn't make this prediction about Carlos Alcaraz recently. No. In fact, he declared Alcaraz as the next GOAT sometime back in mid-July 2022. That's insane, because Carlitos hadn't won the US Open back then, and certainly wasn't the #1 either, although he had racked up 2 Masters 1000 titles and 2 Grand Slam quarterfinals, but that's been done before. So what makes Alcaraz so special? According to Macy, the Spaniard is a generational talent, and I know this word is thrown about a little too casually these days, but he certainly knows what he's talking about. Macy said that people will have to understand that Alcaraz is generational, and then went on to give him the greatest of compliments. The coach said that Alcaraz is Agassi, Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, all wrapped in one. Now, I know, I was around when people were raving about Bernard Tomic, when people went nuts over the various next gens, but this time it really does sound different because Alcaraz looks like the real deal. Oh, and Macy wasn't done singing his praises. He's betting on Alcaraz surpassing the other greats by the end of his career. Macy believes that, barring injury, Alcaraz will go down as the greatest player of all time, and also acknowledged how crazy it sounded. If some analyst on TV was making these predictions, I'd take them with a pinch of salt. But Macy knows greatness. He's coached greatness, and he knows a star when he sees one. And if he's calling on Alcaraz to take over every other tennis legend that has ever been, then I'm not going to argue with Rick. Oh, and in that very interview, he also pointed out how absurd all this sounded, especially considering Alcaraz hasn't even won a major. But he backed up his claims by saying that he saw this kind of greatness in Sampras, in Federer, and in Nadal. And he believes that the 19-year-old is born to do this, and he has the most complete game. Remember, this was right after his exit from Wimbledon last year, which was probably the lowest point of his amazing 2022 calendar year, and much before he won his first Grand Slam title in Flushing Meadows and became the youngest world #1. So is Macy right then? Could Alcaraz really be the real deal? Look, I was born in a generation where everyone raved about the Samprases and the Agassis, but I saw greatness unfold right before my eyes when Federer blessed the tour with his greatness and royalty. I saw Nadal and Djokovic emerge from Federer's gigantic shadow, and I firmly believe that this trio remains the greatest ever to play the game. However, at the same time, none of these three experienced highs like Alcaraz has experienced already in his career. Of course, I have to ask everyone to exercise a bit of caution in Alcaraz's case, because we've seen some failed stars over on the WTA side, right? But Alcaraz might just go on to do what Macy thinks he can do. That's because, unlike Federer, Alcaraz isn't heavily reliant on his God-gifted skill. Unlike Nadal, he's not broken onto the scene purely because of his hard work. And unlike Djokovic, Alcaraz doesn't only rely on the mental resolve to see out games. Again, none of those three players were defined by only those qualities, but that's the thing. Alcaraz seems to have it all, the best of what those three have to offer, and he wants to work hard to achieve greatness. And when you've got the most talented player on tour willing to work hard, well then, the only thing standing in his way to greatness is injuries, which are definitely a concern. I know Carlos is only 19, and at that age, everyone suffers from injuries. It's just the heavy demands of playing at the highest level. There were some concerns from analysts who believed that Alcaraz was being pushed too hard at times in the 2022 season, and I agree. There were some absolutely pointless tournaments that he played in. It's great for experience, but you don't want to experience burnout at this age. It would be a huge disaster and the biggest tragedy if we lost Alcaraz to injuries. The one thing that sets the big three apart from the rest of the men's tennis legends is their longevity. Federer was winning Grand Slams in his late 30s, and Djokovic will probably keep on doing the same. And Rafa, despite a tough injury history, has managed to get the most out of his body throughout his career. So Alcaraz will need to do the same if he wants to replicate the big three and achieve greatness. If he stays relatively fit and keeps on adding more and more to his skill set over the years, there's absolutely no reason why Alcaraz shouldn't become the GOAT. Just look at the way he approaches big games. Alcaraz knows that he belongs to this level. That's why he was perfect against Rafael Nadal last year on clay. Not many players managed to beat Rafa on a